Very rarely do you hear a person say that their boss is like a friend. But, Dan, he bleeds with me when I'm having my low moments, and he encourages me. When he called me and we were talking about doing a new church start, I almost asked him if he lost his mind. I've done this before. But then as we talked, and this was something that was very near and dear for me, because I was about that close to retiring. And this came forward. But Dan has been a great friend, a great supervisor. But for congregation development, he's a great voice to be in your ear. And so when he come and talk with us this morning, he can be a little punchy at times. But that's only because he loves us. But he's direct, he's straightforward, he's honest. And that's what's wrong with the world today. We've sugar-coated things so much, we can't tell when things are bitter because we've over-sugared them. But Dan will come and give us a good word, an honest word, but more importantly, the word that we need now. So without any further delay, here's Dan Pazette, my friend and my boss.
I didn't say distinguished, I said seasoned. That's a nice way to say it. I don't have any notes, I don't know why I was picking up the podium here, the music center. But my name is Dan Pazette. I'm the Director of Church Development for the Western North Carolina Conference, and so I have the pleasure of going around our conference and helping to start new churches in new places and helping to create strategies to strengthen the churches that already exist. So that's a lot of fun. I tell people, I've only got 2 jobs. Start new churches and strengthen the ones we have. That's it, 2 jobs. Not a big deal. But it starts getting bigger and bigger when you realize that we have 1,074 churches in the western half of North Carolina in our conference. 1,074. And that does not count our church starts that have not chartered yet. And we have about 10 of those in the works right now, and we're looking to start 6 more in July. And so we are always in flux, we're always starting new things, we're looking for places. We ask, where are we underserving? We believe that every community should have a spiritual resource for them to reach out to and connect with, a faith community to connect with. And we also believe, this is a little bit of a bias of mine, that every community needs a United Methodist resource to reach out to. United Methodism has a very special gift to give in its theology to other denominations and faith groups because, it's no secret, right, because I am United Methodist, I'm a little biased. But I'm biased on purpose because I believe that no other denomination happens to share God's grace the way United Methodist do. And I really love that. And that is a message that I believe the world needs to hear. And it is a message of good news. Because I believe also that the world already knows the bad news. So we need to be about proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ. So I think you're getting the sense that I'm excited about what I get to do, go around the conference and do that. And so we are broken up into districts. Our Western North Carolina Conference, the United Methodist Church, is broken up into districts. We have 8 districts. One of them is the Metro District, which encompasses the greater Charlotte metro area. And that is what University City United Methodist Church is a part of. And every district, we've asked for a district strategy. We do demographic research. We try to discover where are areas where we are underserving. And one thing that we know for sure, especially here in the Charlotte metro area, we are underserving everyone. We need more churches in the Charlotte metro area because Charlotte metro is growing so quickly and our churches are not keeping up. And so we know that we need more. It's even compounded when you look at how many persons of color we have within the Charlotte metro area that are in the United Methodist Church. Very underrepresented. And so we have created a focus on reaching people of diversity that we have not been serving well in the past. And there's several reasons for that, going back into our history of places where we've messed up, where the Methodist Church made some mistakes, and places where we couldn't come to agreement and churches broke off, and we're still trying to figure that out, how to reclaim that. And the good news is we've made a lot of good ground. We're doing a better job now than ever before, and that is near and dear to my heart. So one of the things that we have committed to in the church development office is to really focus on diversity over the next 3 years. We've already been doing that for the last 3 years, because for every church that we start, half have been a church of either African American, Hispanic, Latino majority. And so we've really been focusing on diversity. Over the next 3 years, we're looking to focus on IDP. But I can tell you this: we could open up a church that is of a predominantly African American style anywhere in Charlotte, and it's needed, because we just have not offered that kind of faith community connection. And then we want to take it to the next step too, right? So what we've seen across the country is this little bit of development where we get better at offering different styles of worship that reach predominantly a specific ethnicity. And then we grow into that next phase where we start doing what is called multi-ethnic worship. I cannot believe how challenging this is, that we have such trouble coming together and worshiping together across ethnic lines. But we do. We have trouble. For various reasons. We have not figured that out well yet, and how to replicate that. It's happening in some places better than others. And so we rejoice whenever we see that working. So when we had the combined worship service here at 11 o'clock a couple of weeks ago, that is something that we are aiming to replicate and figure out and to do more and more of. So that as we grow, we can move into this place where we're not just reflecting our community with who is in our churches on Sunday morning, but we get to the point where we are reflecting what the kingdom of God looks like. I truly believe that in heaven we will not have the divisions that we have created here on earth. And so one of my goals is to help us get to that point where we are reflecting heaven better. Did I just say something that Charlie said before? We want to get to that point where we're reflecting heaven better. So anyway, all of that to say, we are in this movement of planting churches, and we're trying to do church in really good ways that work today. And this is another challenge we're facing, because we are in a major shift in the way that church works. Every 500 years, the church has made a major shift over the last 2,000 years. Think back to the time of Jesus and the earliest church. They met as house churches, and that was kind of an informal groups meeting in houses. You go 500 years later, you start getting into medieval times, you start forming these groups that are church groups, moving into these big cathedrals and building large cathedrals. In history, I don't know if there's any history majors here that could help you out or anything, but as you move through history, you start going through these times and phases where church becomes a state religion. And so Christianity started to become adopted by states as a religion, and boy, that was easy for the 10% tithe, because they just collected it in your taxes. So the church, they would collect it in taxes, then distribute it to the church, and that system actually lasted right up until modern times. The offering plate's really very young. It used to be, you think about England and the Anglican Church, a state church, again, for a large portion of that time, was state funded. So we've seen a major transition there. Then you come up into the time of the Reformation. Martin Luther nails the theses on the door, and another shift happens because we start to branch out into new denominations. And so that's that 1500 mark, move up to 2000, and now we're making a shift again. And we have no idea what that looks like. We're starting to get some clues, but we don't know what the shift is going to be yet. We're still too early into the 2000s to know exactly what this is going to look like, how we're going to reach new people. But we have some clues, which is good, because that's my job, is to figure this out, and I could have been scratching my head a lot. But we have some clues. So one thing that we know is that cathedral churches are station churches, and in my mind, I would consider University City a station cathedral-type church. It might not be your traditional cathedral. However, this is a place in the community, a station where people know to look for their spiritual needs. So we still need those kind of station churches, and so we're planting more and more of those because we need more. We also know that here in these 2000s, that we need to build relationships in a different way. See that from 1500 to 2000? We call that Christendom, or the modern era. Christendom, the modern era. And up until, the 1960s, in the middle 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, on Sunday morning, where were you supposed to be? Church. It was a societal norm. Sunday morning, you're at church. Now in the 2000s, we've made the shift from Christendom to post-Christendom. We've already named it. We're still early in it, but we've named it post-Christendom. Or, if you're in the secular world, we've gone from modernity to post-modernity. And so, what was working in Christendom is not working in post-Christendom. It is no longer the norm in society for people to come to church on Sunday. Now, you come to church on Sunday if you don't have your soccer tournament, your travel ball. You come to church on Sunday if you're not working. 1/3 of our population works on any given weekend. And so if you're not working, you come to church on Sunday. You don't have travel ball. If you can get your kids up in time and get ready, knowing that Sunday is one day of the week that you can have some respite and rest. These are things that we're competing with in society on Sunday mornings these days. And so we know we have to do something a little different. We have to create new strategies for reaching new people. Back in Christendom, it was true that if you opened the doors to the church, or if you needed to reach a new community, you built a building, you opened the doors, you got the pastor to stand out in her or his robe and just wave at people. And you could build it, and they would come. And they would come into the sanctuary, and they would do all sorts of sanctuary-type things because it was the norm. Today, that attractional model of build it and they will come no longer works. Now what we are seeing is a shift to where the church goes out into the community and does good things, provides leadership for doing good in the community, doing spiritual work, and making connections that way. So no longer is it we build it, we open the doors, and they will come. Now it is, we need to go and find where God is at work in the community and join in. And that's how churches are making connections these days, and it's very important. Yes, ma'am?
That sounds like
Apostolic, yes. Yes. And so that is, we're taking our cue in this post-Christendom time. Because this is a time in post-Christendom when people have said either, I have no faith affiliation, or I'm done with my faith affiliation. So the kind of cheeky way that people will say that is that that today's society is filled with nuns and duns. People who have no affiliation or they're done with their church affiliation. And so it goes back to those apostolic times where we look at society without that preconceived idea that everybody out there knows about Jesus, that everybody out there knows about church. In fact, we can really look out the world today and think they probably have the wrong idea about Jesus. And I truly believe that people today, study after study say this, are still religious. People today still believe in God. What they're rejecting is the way that churches presented God to the world. And so we have to come out with a different way to present an age-old, true message. So, one of the ways that we're doing that is through something called Fresh Expressions. You may have heard about Fresh Expressions in the conference. Fresh Expressions are small faith groups that emerge around either a location that is held in common with a group of people or an activity that a group of people hold in common. So, for example, we have Fresh Expressions that are around activities like we have Yoga Church, which is not very far from here, and a kayak church where a group meets every weekend when it's weather permitting to go kayaking, and they meet together for worship and then kayak, or sometimes worship while they kayak. A hiking church. We have churches in places like a church, Fresh Expression that meets at McDonald's. They have breakfast every week and have church at McDonald's. In Florida, that's even caught on. Moe's restaurants in Florida, every single Moe's restaurant has given permission for us to have a Fresh Expression. Not that the church has a Fresh Expression at Moe's. So they call that burritos and Bibles. Here in our conference, we have this is a little bit more controversial, but you have to think we're reaching people who would not otherwise reach. Because we had one of our first Fresh Expressions in Western North Carolina was at the Boone Saloon in Boone. They're no longer at the Boone Saloon. They've now moved down the street to the King Street Pub. But they are meeting and they are reaching people that would not normally go and darken the doors of a traditional cathedral, chapel, or sanctuary. And so these are Fresh Expressions that we've started, and over the last year and a half, we have really focused on these Fresh Expressions. And we've launched them at a rate of about one every 3 days. So we have around 250 Fresh Expressions now going on around Western North Carolina. And they are extremely effective. So some of them are reaching 100 people or more a week. Those usually are centered around a meal of some sort. And some of them are reaching only 8 to 10. But if you take an average and say we launched 250 of these with 10 people each, we figured out a way in post-Christendom to launch what we would call a megachurch at 2,500 people. That's pretty good. So we're using new strategies to do new things and reach new people in new places. Every Fresh Expression that we have is still connected to a station congregation like this one. And so we still need to plant and create new station congregations. And so part of our strategy is to launch 6 new churches every year. And to launch a new church, in order to get a new church up and running, when you consider a pastor's salary and initial investments into that, the conference invests somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 into the launch of a new church start. So if we're launching 6 a year, that's a lot to invest. Some of that investment comes from what is called connectional giving or apportionments. So here at University City, you have a line item in your budget, I would think. I haven't seen your budget, so I don't know for sure, but I think it would be in there, called apportionments for connectional giving. And that's all of our United Methodist churches giving together to help make these new church starts possible. And so if ever you ask, what are we getting out of this line item in our budget? Well, that's what we're getting, is that you're part of a Methodist movement that is making sure that everyone in Western North Carolina has a faith community to turn to. And that's a pretty good reason to have that in your budget, if you ask me. But that's still not enough because it costs a lot of money to plant these churches, see these churches. So what we're doing is, Western North Carolina, anytime a church closes and sells property, the funding, the funds from that sale of property goes into a new church. So it's really a beautiful thing. Every church has a life cycle. Every church is born, will rise, enter into plateau. You might see a couple of life cycles in there as it goes longer and longer, but eventually it closes. And I'm pretty sure that every church has that life cycle because my favorite church is the church in Acts chapter 11, the one in Antioch. I would love to go worship at that church. I've just been enamored with that Bible story, reading that passage. And if I were to go today and try to worship at the church in Antioch, I wouldn't be able to. Somewhere down the line, it reached the end of its life cycle and it quit. So we know that God promises there will always be a church. It's not necessarily a specific church building. There will always be a church, but our churches will start and will close. But how beautiful is it? Because we're not a people of death. We are a people of life and resurrection. So how beautiful is it when the church does reach the end of its life cycle, that we take those proceeds and launch something new and something beautiful. And so that's part of what we're doing here with the church called The Place and the Reverend Charlie Rivals. So we have all of these plans that we set in motion, and we look at Charlotte and we say, okay, for this particular project, we say we have a planter and we have an area that we have identified, which for church planting can sometimes be a rather large area. We want to give the church plant permission to end up wherever it is they feel called to end up. So I try not to put a lot of bureaucratic rules on the location of where this church is at. So for the place in that church plant, we said, look at the top right quadrant of Charlotte, the northeast side. And we've done the demographics. Things look really promising as far as reaching new people. And we said, Pastor Rivens, go forth. Go with God. And we don't say what the name's supposed to be. That's Charlie and his advisory team gets together and talks about that and came up with The Place. And so The Place is a church that is being birthed in our conference. Charlie is the church planter. And so we don't say, Charlie, here's where you have to go, here's where you have to meet. We say, Charlie, we're going to help you with that. If you find a place, we can try to help you with funding for some rents. We can, we can help you with a realtor to find a space. We need to make sure you get to a place where you can help sustain that. And that's basically what we said. So one of the neat things about a church start when we launch churches these days is before they reach an average of 100 in attendance per week, they usually move 5 times. The church starts kind of move around a little bit because they'll start in a space that they can afford and that is available, and maybe sometimes that becomes unavailable, or they grow too large and they have to move to a different space. And so church starts to move around a little bit, and we give them permission to do that. Charlie and The Place has started out in one location and has moved here to this location. That's it, right? There were 2 before this one? So you're on number 3. So you're approaching average. It is okay. It's okay to do that. There is no correlation between the amount of times you move and how successful you are. Some of our most successful churches in our country have moved way more than the average. So there's no real correlation. That's just the average. So we basically told The Place, come over here to this quadrant and look for a place. And so they've been in 2 places before now, and now they are here at University City. And their job University City's job is to fit into this mission that we have of creating a new faith community. Our goal is that in 5 years, there would be an average of at least 125 people worshiping weekly together with the place. Now that is, because you can see Pastor Charlie's holding up his fingers, that is our minimum standard. And the reason that's a minimum standard is because we know by average that it takes about 125 people to have the resources, the volunteer resources, the time, the gifts, the financial resources to sustain a church. Sometimes it takes more than 125 these days, but 125 is about the average. Talk to church consultants, that's what they'll say. So we want our churches, if we're going to invest, now that I've told you the whole story, if we're going to invest University City dollars, because University City is contributing to the system too, right? So if we're going to invest University City dollars, we want to make sure that whatever we start will be able to sustain itself in the future. So that when the conference fund starts to taper off, that church can then fly. And so that's why we say 125 people, because that's about the number it takes for a church to be able to fly on its own. We also told Charlie that we wanted this church, because of our intentional nature of working in diversity, that we wanted this church to be non-Anglo. Our United Methodist Church in our conference and across the nation, we're about 98% Anglo or white. And so we have a commitment to help become more equal and reflect the kingdom of God, as I was saying earlier. And so one of the things we want to make sure is that this church was reaching non-white. And I don't mean to offend anybody by talking about color of skin. I'm trying to be a help and to correct what I know to be wrong about how we have looked at skin color, ethnicity, background, all of those things that we use to divide us. We're trying to make correction there. And so that makes me uncomfortable knowing that I'm a white male in the room talking about ethnicity and race. But please know that my heart is in a really good place because I want us to reflect the kingdom of God. And that is near and dear to my heart. Charlie is smiling because he likes to see me uncomfortable, I guess. But Charlie knows my heart. Anyway, I say that just to say that we have intentionally started more churches of color than we have in the past. And we are going to continue doing that. And so, and the way I say that is predominantly of color, because we want to include all people in all of our churches. So, that's the second thing that we asked Charlie. The third thing was somewhere up in the northeast side of Charlotte, so that you stay up in this area, because we have other projects that we have, other new church start projects that we have kind of bubbling up in other areas, or that could bubble up, I'm hoping and praying. So, as Charlie was doing this and started out, there became another church that closed, called the Plaza. Some of you here are from the Plaza. And the Plaza is a predominantly African-American congregation that closed, has now merged in with the place. That property has sold, and now those funds we have declared will be rolled into helping the place come up with a permanent place of worship in the future. So that is something that has really just come about in the last couple of months and is very exciting. One of the things that is near and dear to my heart is that we have had a past where we intended to give African American congregations closed Anglo churches. And we say, here, have this. And that sounds nice. But what we're giving an African American congregation is a rundown, closed Anglo church with no funds, no help to refurbish, and it's just not been right or just. And so this will give an opportunity for this new church start to build something that we can really say is just and right. And it is from the proceeds of a closed church, so this is a resurrection loan.
Is all the funds from that sale go into the place or into a broad fund from which a grant is made?
Right, so usually that will go into a pot or a group of funds. In this particular instance, we have so the conference usually gets 75% of that, the district usually gets 25% of the sales. And in this particular case, the district and the conference have said that we're going to pour our portions all into the place. So we have earmarked those funds for that. So we're really making a commitment and a financial investment there because we want to make a statement. We want to say that we value people and all people, not just the 98% Anglo people that we have in our churches. We want to make, again, a correction. So Charlie Rybins has that, in the place, has that goal before them now. So reach that 125 mark. Again, that's the minimum. Charlie will say 250, 300. Keeps on holding up 4 fingers every time.
I can't do a half.
Please don't try. So you might get the wrong finger up. So anyway, Charlie Rybins in the place has this goal of having 125 or more in worship. They have found this place as a seed or an incubator place. And let me tell you, it is a true blessing. University City, who's in the room, thank you so much for opening up your doors to the place to come and worship. It's been a blessing for them, and my prayer is that not only is it a blessing for them to have this location to come and worship, but it is also a blessing to University City as we see some of the experiments that are happening with partnering with some worship, with doing some community events together. Those types of things, I think, help us all as we partner together. So I want to commend University City for you opening your doors and making some of that possible. That is truly a beautiful thing. So at some point in time, I hope that relationship goes well. At some point in time, the place will have a new building to move into. And so they are here at University City for a time, and then they will move into a new location. I have heard some, there's always some conspiracy theorists among us. So I have heard some conspiracy theories, and I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist myself. What is the conference really doing? That's a question that I often get when I go and visit a church. What's the conference really up to? Well, what I just said is what we're really up to. There is nothing. This is not a endeavor to sneak Charlie Rybins in here to replace John Boggs when he retires. That is not what this is about. I've heard that one as a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I've heard it too.
I also don't mean to imply that John Boggs is retiring. That's not happening either, as far as I know.
Sure. Is that what the DS didn't come with that?
The DS did not want to field that question. No. So there is no conspiracy theory. What I've said is the plan. We have a new church start that is forming. A new church start has come here. We've had another church that has reached the end of its life cycle, has poured its ministry and its heritage into the place so that the place can go and birth something new. And that is the entirety of the vision and the dream for the Office of Church Development and what we have planned for reaching the people of Charlotte into the future. And I thank you so much for the University City being part of that. I know that John Boggs has come in and has cast some wonderful vision and has started to help the church continue its ministry and its heritage here at University City. And I look forward to seeing where that's going. John is, he's just an out-of-the-box thinker. He is just, I think, he thinks like 3-4 steps ahead. So that when I finally catch up with John, he's like, I got that. Yeah, the conference has sent a good leader here. I knew that when I first met him at the Chicago O'Hare Airport. That's where John and I first met years ago. And we sat and talked for a long time. So I want to open up to any questions. That's basically the general pattern of what we're doing, what church development is all about. Any questions?
So thank you for kind of laying out the typical growth of one church. Just because I have no idea, can you kind of tell us where the place is in that, how long ago it started, how many people we have now, or what's that now?
Yeah, so they started in 2017, and so they're about halfway into their planting life as far as the church, as far as the conference support goes. So financial support starts to taper off in year 3.5. Right at 3.5 years, we start to taper down the support, and we encourage church plants to raise funds during that time so that they can support themselves even longer after that. And the place is, out of all of our church starts right now, the place is doing one of the best jobs at fundraising of any of our churches, if you don't count grants. So these are actual people who are investing in the place and giving them their spiritual, financial giving. The place is doing really well there. We're using a software package that gives you free, you can receive free text to give and free, it'll track giving for free up to a certain number per month. Charlie was the place is the first church start that we've actually had to start paying extra for because they received more than that free allotment. And I told them that's not a bad thing. That is a good thing. That's something to celebrate. So the place is about in that halfway mark. One of the questions the University City folks would have is how long would they need to stay here? How long? And I'll just say it like this: if University City needs to join that, we'll go to place number 4. This is place number 3, we'll go to place number 4. But at some point there will be this new facility for the place to move into, and that looks like it's 2.5 years away, because it'll be a brand new building. We haven't demolished the site yet, so the buildings on the site have to come down and come up and just now getting into zoning.
That's the Coleman Memorial site we're talking about?
That's correct.
What's the membership now?
What's the membership now is not quite the right question because they don't have members yet.
What's the average?
So what's the average attendance? And the average is about 75? 75. And for
But
a...
y'all give us about 15,
So you
20
need
more.
about 50 more, right?
Is that okay?
Might be what we're afraid of.
Start ushering my guys in. Next door.
So yeah,
Isn't that a model?
what's that?
Isn't that sometimes been the model of starting new churches, and that goes back to the 50s, of sending
Okay.
some people out from the church, be part of it for a period of time with no permanent.
I didn't pay her, that's that question.
You know, so this is an interesting turn in this post-Christendom era, because that was the model. There was this model that churches would give up 50 people. You get 3 churches together to give up 50 people and go start something new, and it doesn't work anymore. You know why? Churches don't want to give up 50 people.
I can make the list.
Touche. Yeah, that's why I don't call my colleagues in other districts, or other conferences, and ask them if they have any planters they could send me. I know who they send.
My question is, could you speak on the percentage, like in Sean's Mecklenburg County, of color is anywhere from 39 to 40-something%, and we have, what, 2%?
Yeah.
Color in
You answered your own question,
So,
probably.
but I wanted you to expand a little bit, because I don't think we realize the potential growth if we really had stronger churches of color. Even though I would like to be multi-ethnic, because I think that's where we need to go, but we still need the black presence. And because the black presence and the black worship style, I learned in the Lord attracts all people, not just one kind.
Well, yeah, it is no secret that persons of Anglo descent enjoy African American worship music. You have to bear with us, and I put myself in this group because I am one, because I have to have rhythm lessons. I was preaching at St. Mark's down the road, and sitting up front, the choir's behind me, and I'm sitting there trying to go in the same direction as the choir, and I had to concentrate on that way too hard. And so there's things that we need to learn for us who are Anglo, who have not been part of African American worship. I learned the piano player gives the cue. Watch the piano player at St. Mark's. The piano player keeps you going in the right direction. But how is everybody moving the same? I get the beat. I can move on the beat, but how's everybody going the same way, same direction? Piano player. Best worship service I've been to all year long. That was including last year, because we were still early this year. But I have them, and it's close. Close. So yeah, this whole thing about us being divided by color or background or whatever, that we would like different worship, we're getting close. It's getting close. We could really figure that out.
So it sounds like the Methodist Church has done a lot of research into the demographics within our own denomination. But what kind of research have you guys done about the demographics in that area, and also with other denominations? Like one church pops in my head is that Unity Baptist, the Grace Covenant Church. How does the place fit in to this new site amongst these new nations?
So, interesting thing about research, it doesn't matter what, let me phrase this correctly, the data does not tend to identify with what denomination or what type of church you're planting. New churches are a thing right now. So, and it's a challenge, because if you start a new church that has a fancy new place, new pastor, and here's the key, you have to be in the community, working with the community, because you can't just build it and they come anymore. But if you start a new church, there are people that want to be a part of this new church. And so new churches tend to grow to the point that, just like we've seen in other places, you can have a row of churches and all of them doing fairly well. There is a place in North Carolina where they planted a church literally 5 feet. I can reach out and touch 5 feet from an existing United Methodist church. And both are doing well. They're just different styles, they reach different people. And so sometimes I'll have a pastor, and I received a nasty letter last year, because we planted a church 6 miles away from an existing United Methodist church. And that pastor sent me a letter saying, you're going to pull from the people that we could pull from. It's not fair to us and our church. But the truth is, that church is reaching a completely different group of people that this new church will reach. And so my hunch is that Ebenezer Baptist would pull from a completely different group of people than what the place would pull from. And demographics would kind of sort that out. There are certain people that, there's several different pools there. There are certain people that will go to the Baptist church, certain people will go to the Methodist church, and certain people who will go to the church that they've connected with, which is becoming a larger group of people that just don't care about denominational affiliation.
What about the Rockwell and Zion? Is there a relationship strategically? I don't understand exactly how that relationship works.
Rockwell and AME Zion?
Yeah.
Oh, Rockwell and gotcha.
If you- And it used to be a UC connection church, right? There was a partnership with that church some years ago when Chuck Wilson was here. Is that right? Yeah.
But there's no strategic plan working with any Zion denomination.
Not,
Can I address that? Because I know them very well. We will work with them as we grow, but right now, we need to create our identity. And we, even though we believe in the same 25 articles of religion, the AME and the AME Zion, they have some little differences in the way that they are administrating their churches that could give us really a great advantage, because the way we set up things, the first one, I graduated from Hood, which is an AME Zion seminary, and we don't have checkup meetings where we are pulling money for things and we're not really clear. Our apportionments are clear, and so that could be a negative for them. And the other thing is our salary system for our pastors are far more consistent than that of the AME and the AME Zion or the CME. So we have a strong advantage there. The thing that I think we have that we can compete with anyone is I think we have a great music ministry. And for Baptist, AME Zion, Presbyterian, non-denomination, if your music would bring them in, then we need to have some things in place to keep them there. And that's what we're trying to develop now.
so one thing about multiple churches also, and where I see partnership, is that in a city like Charlotte, there are lots of needs. Like, you name it, there is a need to fulfill. When churches are not in partnership, you have each church trying to fill every need. So you'll go and you'll see one church that's doing homeless ministries, soup kitchens, veterans ministries, tutoring, after-school program. You'll see one church is trying to do it all. But when you go into a community where churches are truly in partnership, you'll have one church that's known as the tutoring church, one church that's known as the homeless ministry church, one church that's known, they have signature ministries. And then each church helps each other with their signature ministry. So they've gotten out of the competition game. We're helping the homeless better than the Baptists. And they've come into a community game where everybody is working toward the same goals and helping each other out. And in Montgomery, First United Methodist Church in Montgomery, I knew that they had done this successfully on the signature ministry. They started a respite ministry for persons with Alzheimer's or dementia. And the Jewish synagogue down the road sent them a check for $10,000 to support that ministry because nobody else was doing it. And that's how I knew that there was true partnership starting to form in Montgomery, Alabama. That's an example of breaking down the competition mindset and going into true partnership mindset. And so I would say the place, what Charlie said is exactly right. It needs to find its identity and then see how to connect with other churches and with their own community. Yes, sir.
Are your new church plants getting away from the Methodist name? Because I work with Liberty Vision and the Place.
Well,
is that a differentiator?
So the place is one that's actually kept the United Methodist. So it's the Place UMC technically. And I'm encouraging them to keep the UMC. There has been this thought in launching new churches that if you don't advertise a denomination, you'll reach more people. It's interesting. It seems like that might be a relic of that end of the Christendom era where people were really concerned about that kind of thing. Now, it doesn't really matter what denomination to many people. You can have that name, they just don't even see it. Or, in a recent study of church logos, this was a study specifically with millennials. The United Methodist logo was the only one of the main denominations that received a positive, what do you call it, a positive reputation. A positive reputation among millennials. And so the United Methodist logo in the United Methodist Church has a positive connotation, and they, this was kind of anecdotal because this wasn't part of the survey, but the surveyors believed that that had a lot to do with the way that the United Methodist Church had been working across the country and across the world. And for the younger you are, the more important it is to see your church living out its faith. So that's one of the characteristics of millennials these days. And it's the number one reason, if you look at the research, number one reason people say they don't go to church, the reason they say they don't go to church, is because the church is too hypocritical. So they're not living out their faith. And for millennials, they have looked to find churches that do. And so if you see elevation churches, you see some of these churches that are really growing and making a stir, you'll see them all over town on a given Sunday where they will have a work day and they'll be in the same t-shirts in many locations all over town doing good things and getting out there, and that is one of the characteristics and qualities that they pick up on. And I don't mean to say that that's not heartfelt either. Elevation's doing those good things because they're called to do it. It's just the side effect of that is that younger people see that and say, that's the church I want to be part of, that's the church that's making a difference.
Question I want to ask probably Charlie answers too is that when a place first came here, 6 months ago or so, is at that point in time it was kind of unknown really. So now what you said is you've given a statement to say, at this point, we're going to go down there to the Springs location, right?
Right.
So my question I guess for Charlie and for you is does that take, which not you should, but I guess, take your mission insight information and tailor it to that location where previously you took your mission insight information, you weren't necessarily, didn't know where to pinpoint.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So with that, you define this location, are you now, back to Charlie, are you taking it and from your reaching out perspective, I'm a marketing guy, so from a marketing perspective and reaching out perspective, are you now going to start focusing more on the fact that it's going to be in that location to get your number of 150 or something?
Yes. So the really good news is that the demographics were favorable for this entire quarter, this entire quadrant, the entire area of Charlotte. The demographics were favorable. But there were two very specific areas that seemed more favorable than others. And one was that Cole Memorial area, and the other one was closer to, I don't remember the name of the area. Yeah, we rode around there forever. Because I always look at Mission Insight in the demographic information, and then I go ride the street to make sure that what I saw is real. So this area is it's an important area. It's a strategic area in the development of the city. The Cole Memorial Project, if it goes kind of like the way it's projected to go, will have a couple of components to it in cooperation with the college and with an affordable housing complex built on site. And so there will be some things to that make that even, there will be partners and neighbors to work with, along with Ebenezer Church there, and then that entire area will continue to develop over the next several years. They've kind of backed off. When we first started looking at that property, there was a light rail scheduled to go through there. That rail system, they were going to tear that up, put a light rail in its place, that goes all the way from uptown Charlotte to Davidson College. And had that light rail system gone in, that particular area would have boomed with apartments. They kind of backed off that, said that's not likely. The railroad doesn't want to sell that. So
It's all
would,
about the money negotiation on leasing the rail line, that was about. So, in conjunction, got to ask you one second, but, I'll think of it, the location. Oh, no, the zoning. Okay, so the zoning that you want for right now, does it include the dream of all these other things with it?
yes, so we're zoned right now in a way that we can do everything. The question about zoning is we would like to include some retail frontage to help provide residual income to support, because offering receipts, that idea of a 10% tithe, we're going back to kind of a different way of thinking, because we know that the average giving, even in Christendom, was 2.2%. So we never got to the tithe. And so that's going down. So retail for residual income to help support church, those types of alternative revenue streams to help support ministry is important. And same thing with University City here. Anything we can do to help think about revenue stream, solar panels on the roofs, anything like that, like our conference
We've
center.
been through the season change with Wesley.
Oh, good.
And Joe Gillett, so we're having those conversations.
Yeah, it is so important because that 10% offering does not look like it's going to get any better than it is right now as we go into this post-Christmas.
So where are you in the rezoning process? The reason I ask that is I had the unfortunate pleasure of getting this property rezoned, change that we did. And so I know the hoops that I had to jump through to satisfy the people of the city and the state, because we did some road stuff out here. And I know that it's not an easy process. I know that getting our land design people involved in the whole bit was not a 2.5-year process. I mean, I did it, it took forever to get this thing done. So when you tell me that it's going to be a 2.5-year process, I'm going to be very honest with you, I'm relatively skeptical of that. So I just want to know is that how do you feel it's going to be a 2.5-year process, and where are you in the process with that?
So there's 3 projects on that site. One of them would be the church building, and then there are 2 other buildings. One would be college building, and one would be the affordable housing. The affordable housing has to go through an application process, and we won't know more about that until the end of this year. So we would not be able to put that in motion for construction until 2021. The middle building, which would be the church building, that could go much easier. We're replacing church buildings that are already on site. We've got the zoning, and feel like we could get the small commercial presence that we're talking about there cleared fairly easily. We're working with a developer who is helping get all this through, who has had a lot of success in fast tracking this. He's been in very close conversation with the authorities to know what that feels like, and he knows what kind of window that we have for zoning. He's got a lot of experience doing that. So we're not asking for a lot. The parking in the zoning is going to be the trick. And if we can get enough vehicles parked, it should be okay. And with the nature of a church, even though church is changing and the pattern of church will change, so the nature of church being a weekend activity helps. So we'll take that into consideration because then we can use some of the college parking when they're not using it on the weekend, and we can use it for church and vice versa. So they are kind of, so here's the thing. I think next week you're meeting with an architect.
Yes.
So meeting with the architect next week to design it based off of our programming to make sure that we're getting the right buildings. And that will help determine how many parking spaces. And there's a chance, it might be a slim chance, but there's a chance we don't have to rezone it all. So that would be our best hope. If it does have to rezone, then we're looking at coming into this fall. They told me that nothing to, it had like 3 letters to it. It's like a CYZ or something.
But based on what you told us before, if we were just joining the church and we approved for the affordable housing piece, we won't have to change anything. But because we're trying to get retail or offset, that was the question being raised, and we didn't seem concerned.
And we could fast track it. Worst case scenario, we could fast track it by building a building that we could have retail too later. So that's the type of thing we're thinking through. Yes, ma'am.
Say more about the affordable housing, because that is a very interesting piece that I didn't hear about before.
Yeah, so the affordable housing, every year there's some awards to build affordable housing that is government funded. And we have put in an application, or our developers put in an application to build an affordable housing complex of 72 units, which would be senior living in that area. And that's part of what we want to do is we have properties that come available. We want these properties to do good and to make a difference in the community. And so this is an opportunity to do that. The other side, it would be University of Charlotte, UNCG, UNC Charlotte. Thank you. I've been working with all sorts of different groups here lately. So yes, UNC Charlotte. And that building, it started out, the idea was that it was going to be 60 or 70 units for college students. Now it has morphed into an activity center that houses, or that would house several different mission organizations with offices around the edge and a common space in the center for partnerships to start to develop. With 10 college interns living on another floor to help support that ministry as it goes forward. So that's turned into a rather interesting project of community services.
I'm just glad to see that the developer you're working with, so you're not starting from dead scratch. In other words, you're moving along the process. So that's a positive.
Yeah, so the one thing that I'll know we've gotten somewhere is we've had the engineers and the bids already done to tear down the buildings on that property. And we've got to do that for, obviously, that's the first thing that has to happen. And I'm just waiting for our partners, the college and the affordable housing, to help share some of that financial burden before I say go with conference dollars. So that's going to take about $600,000 to make that property.
One thing David Pocket, our DS, and I had talked about earlier, just a couple months ago, was at some point early in the year, before this really actually gets started, he would be willing, perhaps he and you, to go with some of us who are really close to the Ebenezer, particularly the men of each church have this strong relationship. I've shared much about that. And so at some point, I would like us to get some sort of, not all of this information here tonight, but some of it so that they know what's happening next door, and then to call them in as a supportive conversational partner to see what it could look like. So we just, maybe when you think it's about time to have that sort of informational meeting with them, we'll go down there to Ebenezer and have a really good conversation with our neighbors already there.
Well, and I know based on the conversations we've been having, we don't want to do that until we have everything lined up about the senior, because they have a senior program already in place. And so there's no need for us duplicating it, but to use that common ground to do some of those things together. Joel and I talked about how much more sense that would make, where we can focus on the areas that we are more concerned with. So we will do that. As far as what you're talking about, as far as the other relationship pieces, I'm sure we will be able to do it. We're just right beside each other. So not even a walkway, it's just right there. So we will do a lot together, and I'm hoping all three of us do a lot together, because this corridor here, if you look at Mission Insight, is a hotbed for all of us.
Yeah, I heard John say, when it's time. And that is important, because one of the things that church plants need is time. They need space. They need room to dream and to be themselves. The more partners that you get as a church start early on, that's the more directions you feel pulled to go. And so we need to give them space to incubate and to prepare and dream. And then once they get to that right time, this might be, once we get to the place where we say, okay, we're going to say go on this building. That might become the right time to then have a meeting with Ebenezer and to say, hey, here's what we're doing. But what happens if we go to too many people and say, here's what we're dreaming about? What people do is they take that, they go to Home Depot, and they pour that bag, they buy cement, and they go and they pour that in the backyard, and they write, here is what's happening in cement. And then the church start doesn't have that room to change, to grow, to go wherever they're led. And so I'm very careful about that. You've heard that approach from me, because I don't say you have to be right here. Because things change quickly, and we need to be able to let the church start be fluid and move right up until the point they're ready to execute and say, this is what we're doing.
I'll just share something that I was reminded of this week that heard tonight. How people hear about information shapes what they think about the information. And so recognizing the tough stream you're trying to navigate, I would just say that I think Ebenezer Baptist will take things better if they hear it from you rather than when they get a mailer from the city that says
Ask about zoning. Yes, a great point. Yes. They need to do that before then. That's right. That is a good and valid point. All right. We all have been very engaged. I am impressed with the quality of the questions. And I really hope that University City, that you will receive as much from the place being among you as they are receiving from you being here and for you being host. So I've really seen a good partnership forming. And again, there will be a time at University City there is no pressure on you to host the place. However, we're extremely appreciative. Don't have to wander in the wilderness. We have a place to come to worship. And so we're very appreciative of that. Just also know that there's no pressure. If it's getting in the way of the direction or vision of University City, then it would be unfair for the place to stay in this location. And we would want to be sensitive to that. So we are always open to that conversation. All right, well.
And thank you for coming. I'd like to end the meeting by an invitation next Wednesday night. Charlie will be the preacher. Pastor Lisa Marshall, who's coming to our United Methodist Conference from the AME Church, will be presiding at Holy Communion in the tradition of the AME Church. And we'll have the imposition of ashes and one combined service for all three of the services that happen here on Sunday morning. Next Wednesday night, 6:30, it'll be over in the Sanctuary. So thank you for coming down.